Have you ever wondered how an entire civilization, spanning continents and centuries, can sort of become lost in our collective memory? Or how just one book can unlock these hidden stories of, well, innovation, resilience, and transformation?
Welcome to the deep dive. This is where we take your sources and really unearth the most important nuggets of knowledge.
Mm.
Today, we're embarking on a deep dive into Lost Islamic History, Reclaiming Muslim Civilization from the Past by Firas Alkhateeb.
Yeah, and our mission today is pretty straightforward. We want to guide you through the intellectual arc of this incredible book, chapter by chapter, making sure you grasp its core insights, without needing to read it yourself.
Exactly. Think of it as your shortcut to really understanding a vast and, let's be honest, often misunderstood history.
It's definitely more than just a summary. It's a journey. We'll traverse, 1,400 years? From the harsh deserts of Arabia all the way to the bustling metropolises of Baghdad, Cordoba, and Istanbul.
And along the way, we'll uncover how the environment shaped a people, how faith ignited a scientific revolution, and how empires rose and inevitably fell, leaving this indelible mark on the world.
So expect some surprising facts, pivotal moments, and hopefully a fresh perspective on a history that, continues to influence our world today. Okay, so let's begin by setting the stage. Chapter 1. The Foundations Pre-Islamic Arabia and its Neighbors. Before Islam, what was the Arabian Peninsula really like? We often picture it as this vast, empty desert, but the book, it paints a much more nuanced picture. Geography played a massive role, didn't it?
Oh, absolutely. It's a fascinating paradox, really. You have this huge landmass, over 2 million square kilometers, sitting right between Asia, Africa, and Europe, a natural crossroads. Yet, the big ancient powers, the Egyptians, Alexander the Great, the Romans, they mostly just ignored it.
And why was that?
Well, basically, it's climate. It was incredibly harsh, dry, made large-scale settlement almost impossible. Monsoon rains only just touch the southern coast, and the Mediterranean rains barely reach the north. So most of the land was just parched year-round.
Right. You had those wadis, those parched riverbeds that only flowed during seasonal rains, offering these brief bursts of fertility, and tiny oases, little fertile spots in a sea of desert. Enough for small communities, maybe, but definitely not enough to sustain large societies.
But here's the interesting twist. This geographical isolation, this very harshness, actually turned out to be beneficial later on,
How so?
because the difficult terrain meant no surrounding states could easily invade or occupy Arab lands. It effectively preserved their distinct way of life, you see.
Ah, okay. So the environment directly shaped the people, the Arabs themselves.
Profoundly. The desert just couldn't support settled civilization in most places, so it forced them into a nomadic lifestyle, constantly moving, searching for pasture for their flocks. In fact, there's a theory that the word Arab itself might come from a Semitic root meaning wandering or nomadic.
Wow. So their whole existence was dictated by this cycle, moving between oases and rain-fed pastures.
Exactly, and this relentless environment forged an incredibly deep sense of community. Survival depended entirely on cooperation. Individualism, pretty much frowned upon. Your relatives, your tribe, the Kabila, that was everything. Protection, support, economic opportunity.
And this led to that famous tradition of hospitality too, right? Where a guest gets 3 days of guaranteed security before you even ask their name.
That's the one. An extraordinary display of trust and tradition, especially in such a potentially dangerous world. Religiously, pre-Islamic Arabia was largely polytheistic. You had the Kaaba in Mecca, this central shrine with hundreds of idols drawing pilgrims from all over.
Were there other religions present?
Yeah, there were some isolated Christian and Jewish communities, but they tended to keep to themselves, avoiding assimilation, maintaining their own insular identities. They shared some common ground with future Muslims, like reverence for Abraham and Moses, but their path was distinct from the prevailing paganism.
So despite this isolation, they weren't completely cut off from the world.
Not at all. To the north, you had the Roman Empire controlling Syria, Palestina, a massive wealthy trading partner. Merchants regularly trekked the Western Peninsula from Yemen up to Syria, connecting Arabia to these huge trade networks stretching all the way from India to Italy. The Romans, it seems, were happy to let the Arabs handle that difficult desert trade.
And what about to the northeast? Persia.
Right, the Sassanid dynasty in Persia. They were locked in this centuries-long struggle with the Romans, and both empires cleverly used Arab tribes as proxies, often Christian converts, like the Ghassanas for the Romans and the Lakhmids for the Persians. These client states were heavily influenced, equipped even, by their imperial patrons.
Okay, but The book mentions that by the early 600s, these empires were exhausted.
Utterly exhausted. Decades, centuries really, of warfare had taken their toll. But most of the Arab tribes in the peninsula itself had cannily avoided direct involvement. They preferred profitable trade with both empires.
Smart, playing both sides.
Pretty much. It put the Arabs at this unique strategic crossroads, requiring, well, remarkable skill in international politics to leverage the rivalries. They even call their peninsula Jazirat al-Arab, the island of the Arabs, because of this unique blend of isolation and strategic safety.
It's like the perfect, untouched canvas for something completely new, which really sets up the next question, doesn't it? How would this deeply tribal, nomadic, polytheistic society react to a radical new message, a message of unity and strict monotheism?
Exactly. And that brings us squarely into Chapter 2, the life of the Prophet Muhammad, a journey that wasn't just spiritual, but a profound social and political revolution.
Muhammad was born around 570 CE in Mecca, right? Controlled by the powerful Quraysh tribe.
Yes. And Mecca itself was uniquely positioned. It was a bustling trading hub, connected to those vital north-south routes, but also isolated enough by the deserts to develop independently, free from direct foreign imperial control. That blend of connection and isolation would be absolutely crucial for Islam's spread later on.
Plus, it was the religious center, with the Kaaba drawing pilgrims. So it was into this dynamic setting that Muhammad received his first revelations.
According to Islamic tradition, yes. Around 610 CE, while meditating in a cave, the angel Jibril, or Gabriel, appeared and commanded him to recite. Muhammad, who is illiterate like most Meccans then, repeated the verses. His wife, Khadijah, was the very first to believe him.
Followed by close companions like Abu Bakr, his cousin Ali.
And his servant Zaid, yes. But these early efforts had to be covert, secretive. Mecca was deeply polytheistic, and the idea of one god replacing all those idols in the Kaaba, that was a direct threat to their whole pilgrimage-based economy. So the first few years, the Muslims were a hidden group.
And what were the core ideas crystallizing through those revelations?
Strict monotheism was central. One god, and the idols were useless. There were warnings of a day of reckoning, heaven and hell based on deeds. But it wasn't just about the afterlife. Islam fiercely denounced social ills, wealth disparity, ignoring the poor. It aimed to transform society itself, emphasizing radical equality, regardless of wealth, status, or tribe.
A revolutionary message, and predictably the Quraysh elite saw it as a major threat.
Absolutely, both economically and socially, their profits depended on those idols. While Muhammad himself had some protection from his uncle, Abu Talib, who wasn't a Muslim but was a powerful tribal leader, his followers, often from lower social classes, faced terrible harassment, abuse, deprivation.
They even tried to stop Islam spreading beyond Mecca, didn't they? Sending people to Abyssinia.
They did. When Muslim refugees sought safety there, the Quraysh sent emissaries. But the Christian king, the Negus, refused to hand them over. He saw them as fellow monotheists. Then, in 617 CE, the Quraysh imposed a brutal boycott on Muhammad's entire clan. Huge suffering, hunger, social isolation, economic hardship.
But it failed to stop him preaching.
Ultimately, yes. It lasted just over a year, and people kept converting. Crucially, this period forged that core Islamic idea. Loyalty to religion now transcended old tribal loyalties. Muslims from other clans risked everything to help those under boycott.
But the boycott still took a heavy toll. 619 CE, the year of sorrow.
A devastating year. Muhammad lost his wife Khadijah, his first convert and emotional rock, and his protector, Abu Talib. Suddenly, the Muslim community was incredibly vulnerable. He sought refuge in Taif, a nearby town, but was cruelly rejected, even stoned. A deeply traumatic event.
He realized then that something radical had to change.
Yes, and the opportunity came from Yathrib, an oasis town north of Mecca. It was plagued by internal tribal conflicts, tensions with Jewish communities. They needed a mediator, and they invited Muhammad, whose reputation as trustworthy, al-Amin, was well known.
So he accepted.
He did. He encouraged his followers to emigrate first. Then, in 622 CE, he and Abu Bakr made their own escape, narrowly avoiding a Quraysh assassination plot. Yathrib was renamed Al-Madina al-Munawwara, Medina, the Radiant City. It offered security and, crucially, the freedom to spread Islam openly.
Life in Medina must have brought new challenges, though, mixing the Meccan immigrants, the Muhajirun, with the Medina locals, the Ansar.
Definitely. Muhammad had to forge a new loyalty to the Ummah, the Muslim nation, based purely on shared belief, overriding those old, deep-seated tribal loyalties. The Constitution of Medina codified this. It established Medina as a state under Muhammad's authority, operating on Islamic law, with him as the final judge. Old customs like blood feuds were replaced with a structured justice system.
And it included the Jewish communities.
Critically, yes. It granted Jews freedom of religion, provided they recognized Muhammad's political authority and joined in the common defense against the Quraysh. This became a foundational model for how later Islamic states treated non-Muslim minorities.
But tension still arose with some Jewish groups.
Yes. Despite sharing monotheism, many Jews rejected Muhammad as a prophet. The idea of a chosen people clashed pretty fundamentally with Islam's egalitarian message. It created friction.
And the conflict with Quraysh and Mecca didn't just disappear.
Not at all. It continued. And early on in Medina, a revelation came down, Quran 22.3940, granting Muslims permission to fight back when oppressed. This was a huge shift. It signified Islam wasn't just beliefs, it was a complete way of life, encompassing self-defense.
Which led to battles like Uhud in 625 CE.
Exactly. The Quraysh sought revenge for an earlier defeat at Badr. Muhammad led a smaller army out to meet them near Mount Uhud. But there was internal dissent, some Muslims refused to fight, and significantly, 2 Jewish tribes refused to honor their pact under the Constitution and join the defense. This weakened the Muslim force. While it wasn't a decisive defeat for Islam, it definitely sowed more seeds of tension with those Jewish tribes who broke the agreement.
Then came the Battle of the Trench in 627 CE.
Right. Neither side could win decisively in open battle. So the Quraysh besieged Medina from the north. And crucially, they were aided by the Jewish tribe, Banu Qurayza, on the city's south. Muhammad, on the advice of Salman the Persian, used a brilliant tactic digging a defensive trench, unheard of in Arabia.
And it worked.
The siege failed. But Banu Qurayza's treachery couldn't be ignored. They were punished according to the terms laid out in the constitution they had agreed to. The men involved in the betrayal were executed, women and children exiled. This set a clear precedent. Non-Muslim minorities were tolerated unless they actively threatened the security of the state.
So with Medina secured, Muhammad could finally engage the Quraysh more directly.
Yes. In 628 CE, he made a bold move. He marched towards Mecca with 1,500 pilgrims, unarmed, declaring peaceful intent. The Meccans were, well, baffled. They negotiated the Treaty of Hudaybiyah. No pilgrimage that year, but a 10-year truce and access the following year. Some Muslims were unhappy with the terms, felt it was a setback.
But it turned out to be a masterstroke.
A strategic masterpiece. That truce provided crucial breathing room. Islam expanded exponentially. Missionaries went out across Arabia, even to the Byzantine and Persian empires. Bedouin tribes converted in droves. And crucially, key Meccan military commanders like Khalid ibn al-Walid and Amr ibn al-As joined Muhammad. His strength grew immensely.
And the truce didn't last the full 10 years.
No. Just 2 years later, a Quraysh-allied tribe broke it. Muhammad, now in a position of overwhelming power with thousands of allies, marched on Mecca. This time there was barely any resistance. The city was entered almost bloodlessly.
A triumphant return.
Absolutely. The idols around the Kaaba were destroyed, rededicating it to the one God. And Muhammad showed remarkable leniency as a conqueror, sparing most Meccans revolutionary in the context of brutal tribal warfare. This really marked the end of Jahiliyyah, the pre-Islamic ignorance, and the definitive beginning of the Islamic era. His rapid rise from exiled rebel to benevolent conqueror seemed almost miraculous, forging this powerful belief that Islam was divinely guided.
So by 630 CE, Islam's core tenets were fully formed: belief, worship, governance.
All formalized through Muhammad's teachings and the ongoing Quranic revelations. A new social order, based on Islamic unity over tribalism, was truly inaugurated. In his final pilgrimage, the Hajj in 632, he delivered the farewell sermon. Emphasized equality, no Arab is superior to a non-Arab except by their God consciousness.
Yeah.
He called for respect for women, urged abandoning old tribal rivalries. It was a summary of his entire prophethood, a complete revolution, ushering in this new God-centered order.
And he prepared for its continuation after his death.
He did. He sent learned men to teach new converts far away. Medina became this vibrant hub of Islamic knowledge. He even prepared a military expedition against the Byzantines, reiterating the Islamic ethics of war that would guide Muslim armies for centuries.
It's an incredible trajectory, from persecuted minority to this unifying force. It highlights his unparalleled influence, but it raises that crucial question again. How would this young state, forged by one man, thrive and expand after he was gone?
Exactly. And that takes us right into Chapter 3. The rightly guided caliph sustaining the revolution. Imagine the scene. The prophet has just died in 632 CE. A new faith, a unified peninsula, but no prophet. How do they navigate these first critical steps?
The community chose Abu Bakr, right, as the first Khalifa or Caliph.
Yes, Caliphat ul-Rasul, successor of the Messenger of God. And it's absolutely crucial to understand, as the book points out, the Caliph was not a new prophet. Islam is clear. Muhammad was the final prophet. The Caliph's role was purely political leadership, preserving Islam, managing the state according to Muhammad's example.
And his first challenge was huge,
Yeah.
consolidating the state, the wars of apostasy.
Immediately, various tribes saw the prophet's death as a chance to break away, some even following new false prophets. Abu Bakr acted decisively. Khalid ibn al-Walid led swift military campaigns across the peninsula to suppress these movements and bring the tribes back into the fold.
And these wars set important precedents.
Three vital ones. First, spiritual unity. No deviations, no false prophets allowed. Islam's message was final. Second, political unity. Only one Muslim state, the Caliphate, under one leader, essential for survival between Byzantium and Persia. And third, central government authority. A definitive break from decentralized Arab tribalism. A new era of centralized governance had begun.
And Abu Bakr also initiated the compilation of the Quran.
Yes, at Umar's suggestion. During the Prophet's life, revelations were written on scattered materials, bone leaves, parchment, and mostly memorized. With many memorizers dying in battle, there was a real risk of loss. Abu Bakr started the process of gathering these manuscripts into one single authoritative collection, a crucial act of preservation.
His caliphate was quite short, though, only 2 years.
Just 2 years, but incredibly consequential. He stabilized the state, prepared it for expansion, and set another key precedent on his deathbed. He nominated Umar ibn al-Khattab as his successor, based purely on merit and capability, not kinship. This established a standard for qualified leadership, not hereditary rule.
It's amazing how those first few years, under such intense pressure, really set the template for centuries of Islamic governance. Abu Bakr's decisions were incredibly foresighted. So with the Muslim world stabilized, unified, what was the next big step under Umar?
Expansion. Umar's 10-year reign, 634 to 644 CE, saw unprecedented expansion. With Arabia unified and stable, he turned the Muslim armies north. What started as raids for security and maybe spoils quickly escalated into full-scale conquests of Byzantine and Sassanid territories.
And those empires were weak at the time.
Critically weak, exhausted from decades of devastating war between themselves. Their fertile lands were ripe for the taking, but this was also, according to the book, a different kind of warfare. Muslim armies were under strict orders from Umar. Protect non-combatants, women, children, the elderly, leave monks alone, don't destroy crops. A radical departure from the norms of the time.
So where did they conquer first?
Armies went into Syria and Mesopotamia around 633 CE. In Syria, the decisive Battle of Yarmouk in 636 CE saw a smaller Muslim force completely rout a much larger Byzantine army. Syria fell by 638, Egypt swiftly followed by 642. Two of Byzantium's richest provinces gone.
And Persia, Mesopotamia.
So Ibn Abi Waqqas led the armies there. Another decisive victory at the Battle of Qadisiyah in 636, followed by the capture of the Sassanid capital, Ctesiphon, in 637, Umar pragmatically halted further pursuit into the unfamiliar Iranian plateau. It's telling the captured Sassanid royal standard wasn't kept as a trophy, it was sold to feed the poor.
And Umar wasn't just a military leader, he was an administrator too.
A genius administrator. For most people in the conquered lands, life barely changed, except who they paid taxes to. And often the tribute paid to Medina was lower than the taxes they'd paid to Constantinople or Ctesiphon before. Plus, there was increased religious tolerance for groups like Monophysite Christians and Jews who had faced oppression under Byzantine rule. This actually made Muslim rule quite welcome in many places.
So in 10 years, he transformed the Muslim state into a major regional power.
Absolutely. From a desert society to a true empire. His reign ended suddenly, though. Murdered in 644 CE by a Persian slave with a personal grudge, on his deathbed, Umar nominated a council, a shura, of 6 respected leaders to choose the next caliph.
Umar's blend of military strategy and pragmatic administration really laid the groundwork. The speed, the relative peace of the conquests, those new rules of engagement, it's remarkable. But could this rapid expansion and stability last under his successor? The council chose Uthman, right?
They chose Uthman ibn Affan. His reign, 644 to 656 CE, brought new dynamics. Uthman was from the wealthy Umayyad clan, and he did rely heavily on his family for key appointments. His cousin Muawiyah was already governor of Syria, a powerful position, and he appointed his foster brother in Egypt. This led to early whispers, allegations of nepotism, a fairly new concept in Islamic governance then.
But militarily, things continued successfully under Uthman.
Initially, yes. He ordered the construction of the first Muslim naval fleet, a very smart move. It thwarted Byzantine counterattacks and expanded Muslim influence right into the Mediterranean, Cyprus, Crete, even raids on Sicily. On land, conquest pushed into Armenia and finally secured the Persian heartland, ending the Sassanid Empire by 651 CE. Within a decade, Muslim armies had reached the edges of Central Asia.
Yet, despite these successes, discontent grew.
It simmered, partly due to those administrative policies, the Umayyad appointments, and partly because the pace of conquest slowed down. Less conquest meant less booty, less wealth flowing back to Medina, causing some economic stagnation and resentment among certain groups. His popularity definitely didn't match Umar's or Abu Bakr's.
And this led to his assassination in 656 CE.
Tragically, yes. A small group of disgruntled soldiers came from Egypt to Medina to protest his policies. They apparently intercepted a letter, allegedly from Uthman, ordering their execution. Enraged, they returned and besieged Uthman in his home.
And he refused to defend himself.
He refused to allow Medina to arm itself or let Muawiyah's Syrian forces intervene, fearing bloodshed in the Prophet's sacred city. He was ultimately murdered while reading his copy of the Quran. His death just shattered the unity of the Muslim world. It's a stark contrast: initial success, then this violent end. It shows even huge territorial gains couldn't paper over those deep internal fractures. So with the community now broken, who could possibly reunite it? And at what cost?
That incredibly difficult task fell to Ali, the Prophet's cousin and son-in-law. His reign, 656 to 661 CE, was turbulent right from the start.
His immediate crisis was dealing with Uthman's murderers. Popular feeling and Muawiyah in Syria especially demanded justice. But the rebels still effectively controlled Medina, making punishment dangerous, likely leading to more bloodshed. It was an impossible situation.
So he moved the capital.
Yes, to Kufa in Iraq, where he had stronger support. But this move alienated many in Medina. Then, a powerful group, including the Prophet's widow Aisha and respected companions Talha and Zubair, marched to Iraq to confront him, still demanding justice for Uthman. This led to the Battle of the Camel in 656 CE, a tragic, bloody battle between Muslims, weakening the community even further.
And the conflict with Muawiyah continued.
Muawiyah stubbornly withheld allegiance until Uthman's killers were punished. To avoid an even wider civil war, Ali and Muawiyah agreed to arbitration in 658 CE. The outcome was ambiguous, but seemed to lean towards removing both from power, which satisfied neither completely.
And this arbitration led to another split, the Khawari.
Yes, the Khawari, the ones who left. A group of Ali's own supporters rejected the arbitration, declaring decision belongs to God alone. Their extreme political stance quickly became an extreme religious one. They deemed any sinning Muslim an unbeliever. They started terrorizing Iraq, and Ali eventually had to crush their main force in battle.
What, they still played a role in his death?
Tragically, yes. The Kharijites, aiming to remove both Ali and Muawiyah, succeeded in assassinating Ali as he prayed in the mosque in Kufa in 661 CE. His turbulent reign ended abruptly, paving the way for Muawiyah to take over.
What a tragic end to that first period, the rightly guided caliphate. It's a stark reminder of how political fractures can tear even devout communities apart. And it fundamentally changed Islamic governance, didn't it? Moving away from that merit-based system.
It really did. Which leads us to the next phase. What kind of leadership emerged from this chaos? And how did it alter the path of the Muslim world for centuries?
Yeah.
Chapter 4, the establishment of the Muslim state dynasties and divisions.
This marks that profound shift, moving from the rightly guided era to stable but often controversial dynastic rule. The nature of Muslim government changes fundamentally here.
Muawiyah, ruling from 661 to 680 CE, stepped into the vacuum after Ali's death and reunified the Muslim world. Hugely popular in Syria, where he'd been governor for years, he skillfully negotiated with Ali's son Hassan, who relinquished his claims, preventing more civil war. A very pragmatic move.
And he changed the style of the caliphate, made it more like a monarchy.
Yes, he transformed it from that first among equals style to something more formal. He was the first caliph to sit on a throne, to pray in an enclosed area for protection. It was a blend, really traditional Arab leadership mixed with elements of Roman and Sassanid court culture. He was known to walk in Damascus markets in patched clothes, yet he also built enormous grand mosques, bridging two worlds.
And like Umar, he focused on external expansion to unify people internally.
Exactly, de-emphasize internal divisions by focusing outwards. The navy, started under Uthman, grew stronger, occupying Rhodes and Crete, projecting Muslim power across the Mediterranean. And for the first time, Muslim armies besieged Constantinople itself from 674 to 678 CE.
They didn't succeed in taking it then, though.
No, they lacked the manpower and the technology at that point. But the attempt fulfilled a prophetic promise and signaled this new level of ambition. Muawiyah's political skill is really evident here. That focus outward was smart, but establishing hereditary rule. That sowed seeds for future trouble, didn't it?
Which brings us right to that pivotal moment of succession.
Muawiyah appointed his son Yazid as successor well before his own death. He demanded oaths of allegiance. The intention was to avoid future succession wars, preserve unity. But the decision was incredibly controversial.
Why Yazid specifically?
Well, Yazid lacked the aura of those early companions, and there were widespread rumors about his lifestyle, alcohol, luxuries, a stark contrast to the Prophet's piety. Opposition quickly arose from figures like Abdullah ibn al-Zubayr in Mecca, and crucially from supporters of Ali's descendants in Iraq, particularly focusing on Ali's younger son, Hussein.
Which leads directly to the tragedy of Karbala in 680 CE.
Yes. Hussein, counting on support promised from Kufa in Iraq, traveled with only about 70 family members and close friends. But the Kufans abandoned him before he even arrived. Yazid's forces surrounded him at Karbala. Hussein and most of his small band were killed in a brutal massacre.
And this became foundational for Shia Islam.
Absolutely. A defining, tragic moment marking that deep schism which endures today. The popular outrage was immense. Abdullah ibn al-Zubayr capitalized on it, declaring himself caliph in Mecca. After Yazid died in 683, Umayyad control just collapsed almost everywhere outside Syria. Abdullah gained allegiance in Iraq, Egypt, parts of Syria.
But the Umayyads eventually regained control.
They did, under Marwan and then his son Abd al-Malik. Through a mix of shrewd tribal politics and, frankly, open fighting, they crushed Abdullah's rebellion by 692 CE. But Karbala, that solidified a theological and political divide that still resonates. It shows that clash between the desire for unity and the harsh realities of power and lineage. So, despite all this internal strife, did outward expansion continue under the re-established Umayyads?
It absolutely did, with some truly astonishing conquests. Caliph Abd al-Malik, once he'd consolidated power, sent armies to conquer Carthage in 698 CE, wiping out the last Byzantine presence in North Africa. Full control there.
And then, the spectacular conquest of the Iberian Peninsula Al-Andalus. Accounts mentioned Visigothic unrest, persecution of Jews and unorthodox Christians, maybe even an appeal from a local official. It created an opportunity. Musa ibn Nasr, the governor of the Maghreb, sent Tariq ibn Ziyad, a brilliant Berber convert, across to Spain in 711 CE.
Landing at Gibraltar, Jabal Tariq, Tariq's mountain.
Exactly. From there, Tariq led raids. Then the decisive Battle of Guadalete in 711. Tariq's army, maybe 10,000 soldiers, crushed King Roderick's Visigothic force, which was riddled with disloyalty. Roderick was killed. Central control just collapsed. Cities fell incredibly quickly.
Musa came over with reinforcements.
Yes, to consolidate rule. Most of the peninsula fell under Umayyad control within just 4 years, and achieved by relatively small armies, maybe 10,000 to 20,000 soldiers total. The speed suggests significant local support, or at least acceptance.
It's astounding, the conquest of Iberia. Especially with those numbers. Speaks volumes about the Visigothic kingdom's weakness, maybe the appeal of the invaders, too. It's that recurring theme. Internal weakness often paves the way for external conquest. But as the empire expanded so rapidly, how did the Umayyads handle governing such diverse peoples, especially the non-Arab converts?
And this brings us to a very controversial aspect of their rule: taxation and what the book calls institutionalized discrimination.
The jizya tax.
Exactly. Non-Muslims paid this special tax. Traditionally, converting to Islam meant you stopped paying it, but the Umayyads faced a dilemma. If too many people converted, their tax revenue would plummet. That revenue funded the army, the administration, their increasingly luxurious palaces.
So they changed the rule.
They made a very contentious policy decision. New non-Arab converts had to continue paying the jizya, ostensibly to ensure sincere conversions, but the result was clear discrimination based on ethnicity. Arabs were mostly Muslim already, so exempt. This kept non-Arabs, Copts, Greeks, Berbers, Persians, effectively at the bottom rung, even after embracing Islam.
Which directly contradicted the Prophet's message of equality. No Arab is better than a non-Arab.
Directly. It sowed deep resentment among the Mawali, the non-Arab converts, pragmatic for the treasury perhaps, but fundamentally against Islamic ideals. A major weakness, simmering beneath the surface. Which makes you wonder, how would this internal discontent, especially among non-Arabs, eventually bring down the powerful Umayyads?
That leads us straight to the Abbasid Revolution. The Umayyads' policies that perceived racial discrimination, The lingering bitterness over Karbala fueled widespread resentment, especially in Persia, where there was a large non-Arab Muslim population.
The Abbasids, another influential old family from Mecca, brilliantly capitalized on this. They presented themselves as reformers, promising a more equitable society, a return to pious leadership, addressing the grievances against the Umayyads. Their message resonated deeply, especially in Persia, and they gained massive support.
The final showdown was the Battle of the Zab in 750 CE.
Yes, in central Mesopotamia. The Abbasid forces decisively defeated the Umayyad army. Organized resistance just collapsed. Damascus, the Umayyad capital, fell soon after.
And the Abbasids established a new capital.
The second Abbasid caliph, al-Mansur, made that pivotal move. He founded Baghdad in 765 CE, strategically near the old Persian capital Ctesiphon. Within 20 years, it exploded into the largest city in the world, over 1 million residents. A true global hub, government, culture, science, art.
And a key Abbasid innovation was integrating non-Arabs, particularly Persians.
Absolutely, a major shift. They fully utilized the Persians' long-standing bureaucratic expertise. This led to a much more complex, efficient administration. The caliphate itself remained in Arab hands, but the administration became increasingly Persianized.
So the Abbasid revolution wasn't just a dynasty change, it was a societal reset.
Pretty much. By embracing non-Arabs, centralizing power in Baghdad, they created this environment ripe for an incredible intellectual and cultural flourishing. This transformation really laid the groundwork for what we now call the golden age of Islamic civilization. Which leads us to the obvious question. How exactly did this new intellectual environment blossom? What were its most profound contributions to human knowledge? Chapter 5. Intellectual Golden Ages Light from the East.
Right. If the previous chapters were about struggles, politics, formation, this chapter explodes with intellectual power. This period, roughly 9th to 13th centuries, the Islamic Golden Age. Unparalleled scientific, religious, philosophical, cultural development.
And at the heart of it, the House of Wisdom Beit al-Hikmah in Baghdad. Established by Caliph al-Mamun around 813 CE, he genuinely believed an ideal society needed science and rationalism. He actively gathered knowledge from across his vast empire.
And it wasn't just a library, was it?
No, it was unique. A university, library, translation institute, research lab, all rolled into one. Scholars were paid incredibly well. The famous story is getting a book's weight in gold for a translation. The best minds, Muslim and non-Muslim, flocked there from all over.
What made this possible? Why then? Why there?
Several key factors came together. First, that unified empire broke down barriers. Scholars from Persia, Egypt, India, former Byzantine lands could all converge and collaborate in Baghdad. Second, Arabic became the lingua franca for religion, communication, and crucially, for scientific research. It united scholars from different mother tongues.
And the third factor.
Islam itself. The religion actively encouraged acquiring knowledge as an act of worship. The Quran, the Prophet's sayings, emphasized scholarship. Scientific books often started with Quranic verses urging reflection.
It's incredible how those three things, unified empire, common language, religious mandate, created such fertile ground. It wasn't just collecting facts. It was seen as a path to understanding God. So which specific fields saw the most groundbreaking advances?
Let's start with a fundamental one, mathematics. For Muslim scientists, math was almost sacred. They believed understanding advanced math helped uncover the universe's underlying numerical principles, leading to a deeper appreciation of God's creation.
And a key figure here was Al-Khwarizmi.
Muhammad ibn Musa al-Khwarizmi, yes. A Persian scholar at the House of Wisdom. He was crucial in adopting and spreading the Indian numeral system 1, 2, 3, etc. It made complex calculations so much easier than, say, Roman numerals. And crucially, he formalized the concept of zero.
Zero was revolutionary.
Absolutely. Even without a full proof for dividing by zero, then, it changed everything. And his book title, Al-Jab, meaning completion or restoration, gave us the word algebra, referring to balancing equations.
And others built on this. Omar Khayyam.
Omar Khayyam, yes. Better known in the West for poetry, but a brilliant mathematician, too. Solved cubic equations, formulated the binomial theorem. These theoretical advances paved the way for fields like trigonometry and calculus.
And trigonometry had practical uses.
Hugely practical. Al-Battani, in the 10th century, developed it further to calculate exact positions on Earth, and critically, the direction of Mecca, Qibla, for daily prayers. They produce handbooks with precise coordinates. Mosques built over 1,000 years ago. Many point directly at Mecca with incredible accuracy. Even modern GPS relies on these fundamental trigonometric principles.
It shows how theoretical knowledge served real needs finding Mecca, navigating. And they saw it as a religious journey, too. So how did these math advances lead to understanding the cosmos?
Logically, it flows right into astronomy. The Quran has numerous verses about heavenly bodies moving by precise calculation, guiding mankind. This directly inspired intense astronomical study.
And they separated it from astrology.
Yes, Muslims were the first to rigorously separate astronomy as a science from astrology as, well, guesswork or mythology. With Al-Mamun's support, they meticulously studied and corrected Ptolemy's geocentric model. Some, like Al-Biruni in the 11th century, even proposed the Earth might spin on its axis, though it wasn't widely accepted without proof then.
And this influenced Europe later. Copernicus, Galileo.
Definitely. Their debates, their more accurate calculations, spread to Europe via Latin translations. Al-Majridi's work, for example. And unlike European astronomers later, Muslim scientists weren't generally harassed by religious authorities. Science was seen as a form of worship.
What about practical tools? The astrolabe.
They significantly improved the ancient Greek astrolabe. Combining its functions with their precise calculations, it became indispensable for navigation determining latitude by the stars. It revolutionized long-distance travel, especially for the Hajj pilgrimage, and was standard until the 1700s.
The astrolabe is a perfect example. Scientific curiosity, driven by religious observance, leading to practical tools that reshape the world. Shows the interconnectedness. So how did knowing the stars translate to understanding the Earth itself?
Right, because what's up there tells you about down here. Let's talk geography. The sheer size of the Muslim empire made long-distance travel safe and common, which naturally spurred huge advancements in geography.
And they knew the Earth was round long before Columbus.
Oh, absolutely. That was known since ancient Greece. What's astounding is that Abbasid geographers used trigonometry and spherical geometry to calculate the Earth's diameter and circumference with incredible accuracy off by only tens of kilometers. Without any modern tech, just brilliant calculation.
Their maps were advanced too. Al-Idrisi.
Muhammad al-Idrisi, working in 12th century Sicily for the Norman king Roger II, a great example of cross-cultural patronage. He produced a world map that was unrivaled in accuracy and detail for centuries. It wasn't just physical geography. It included descriptions of cultures, politics, societies.
And the book mentions tantalizing hints of pre-Columbus voyages across the Atlantic.
Yes, it's fascinating. Al-Masudi in the 10th century wrote about an 889 CE voyage from Muslim Iberia that sailed west for months, found a large unknown landmass, traded, and returned. His map even included this unknown land.
Al-Idrisi recorded something similar too.
He did. A group of Muslim sailors ventured 31 days west, landed on an unknown island, were captured, and then freed by an Arabic-speaking native. And later, Ibn Battuta reported that Mansa Abu Bakr of Mali in the 14th century sent 2,000 ships into the Atlantic to explore and was never heard from again after an earlier expedition had returned with news of land.
So not definitive proof of colonization, but strong hints.
Exactly. Accounts by reliable geographers, plus hints in early European explorer journals.
Yeah.
It suggests possibilities that could really rewrite the standard narrative of the Age of Discovery. It shows how advanced their geographical understanding was. So beyond mapping the world, how do they approach the human body? Health.
Right. That brings us to medicine. Foundations of modern healthcare, really. They built on Greek knowledge, but emphasized empirical study, clinical professionalism. Baghdad had licensing exams for doctors back in the 10th century.
They really picked up where the Greeks, like Galen, left off. Galen's ideas were revolutionary, but flawed, yet accepted uncritically for centuries. Muhammad ibn Zakaria al-Razi in 9th century Baghdad was one of the first to really challenge him in his book Doubts About Galen.
What did al-Razi argue?
He argued diseases came from external and internal factors, not just Galen's humors or divine punishment, a radical idea. He developed specific cures based on observation and famously treated the poor for free. His huge encyclopedia, The Virtuous Life, stressed dedication, continuous learning, medicine as a sacred duty.
And then there was Ibn Sina Avicenna.
Probably the most famous, early 11th century. He applied rigorous rationalism, formulated a causal chain theory for bodily functions, disease, concluded diseases spread through air, water, soil, and each needed unique treatment.
His canon of medicine was hugely influential.
Monumental. It insisted drugs be tested under controlled conditions, experimental medicine. It became the standard textbook in Muslim and European medical schools for centuries, well into the 1600s, even translated into Chinese.
What kind of things did it cover?
Everything. Anesthesia, breast cancer, rabies, toxins, ulcers, kidney disease, tuberculosis, and remarkably the connection between mental and physical health, centuries before Freud or Jung.
And they established hospitals. public
Some of
hospitals.
history's first, driven by that Islamic principle of caring for the poor. Ahmad ibn Dalun, in 9th century Egypt, spent a fortune 60,000 gold dinars on a free public hospital, even with a ward for mental illness. Later in the 13th century, Ibn al-Nafis accurately described blood circulation heart to lungs for oxygen, then back.
So, Muslim medicine, building on Greece, really formed the basis for modern Western medicine.
It absolutely did. A
Yeah.
crucial cross-cultural exchange. It's astonishing how much modern practice empirical testing, mind-body connection, has roots here. And that concept of free healthcare for the poor points to a very different social approach, too. So how did this scientific method extend beyond biology to the physical world itself?
And that takes us to physics. Again, building on translated ancient works, but applying mathematical ideas to the real world, seeking divine principles, laying foundations for giants like Newton and Einstein.
A key figure was Ibn al-Haytham, 965–1040 CE, from Iraq, but did much of his work on light while under house arrest in Cairo.
He challenged Ptolemy on light.
Yes, Ptolemy thought light came from the eye. Ibn al-Haytham, there are hundreds of experiments that theorize light bounces off objects into the eye, where the brain processes it. Seems obvious now, but revolutionary then.
His book of optics was groundbreaking.
Absolutely. Argued light travels in straight lines. And to prove it, he built the camera obscura, a light-proof box with a tiny hole projecting an image, the precursor to modern cameras.
And he calculated the atmosphere's depth.
Astonishingly, yes. Combining optics and astronomy based on refracted light at sunset, a calculation verified by spacecraft a millennium later. But maybe his biggest contribution was pioneering the scientific method itself.
How so?
Absolute reliance on observation and experimentation. This separated science from ancient Greek philosophy's reliance on reason alone. It formed the basis for modern science. He saw it as searching for truth and knowledge to gain closeness to God.
And after him, technology flourished.
Yes, building on these discoveries. Crane shafts, water pumps, eyeglasses, compasses, early gliders, even water-powered robots like Al-Jazari's in the 12th century. When Muslim scientific creativity eventually waned due to Crusaders and Mongols, Christian Europe picked up the torch with figures like Copernicus, Galileo, Newton, all influenced by Islamic scientific literature.
What's truly revolutionary about Ibn al-Haytham is that insistence on empirical studies, the scientific method. It's not just what they discovered, but how, a fundamental shift. But as science flourished, how did the understanding and practice of Islam itself evolve, become systematized?
Right, and this leads us to the core of Islamic scholarship, fiqh and hadith. Alongside empirical science, the Islamic sciences developed intensely. Scholars formulated fiqh Islamic jurisprudence, applying Quranic rules and the Prophet's actions, sunnah, to a dynamic, changing world.
And different interpretations developed, the madahib.
Exactly, because by the late 600s, few people remembered the Prophet directly. As Islam spread, systematic interpretation became crucial. The challenge was adapting early rules to new situations.
The sources were the Quran and Hadith.
Primarily. But jurists differed on what to do if something wasn't explicitly covered. This led to the four great jurists. Abu Hanifa, late 7th, early 8th century, advocated rational logic. Each had best judgment based on what Muhammad likely would have done. Popular in Iraq.
Then Malik.
Malik, 8th century, based in Medina, believed the actions of Medina's citizens, descendants of the companions, and strict adherence to hadith were key. Muhammad al-Shafi'i, late 8th, early 9th century, studied both traditions. He advocated ijtihad, but only through strict analogy to situations Muhammad had addressed. He's seen as the father of usul al-fiqh, the principles of jurisprudence, a systematic methodology.
And Ahmad ibn Hanbal.
Ibn Hanbal, 9th century al-Shafi'i student, leaned even more towards strict reliance on hadith over ijtihad. He helped develop the rigorous science of hadith authentication.
And these four led to the four major schools, Hanafi, Maliki, Shafi'i, Hanbali.
Correct. Not different sects, but different equally valid interpretations aiming for authentic practice, still followed by over 1 billion Muslims today, geographically distributed.
And the science of hadith authentication became crucial. Al-Bukhari.
Hugely important. Prophet sayings were mostly oral initially. Muhammad al-Bukhari, 9th century, pioneered a scientific approach. Verified the wording and the chain of narrators, isnad, checking their honesty, memory, reliability. His Sahih al-Bukhari, with over 7,000 rigorously authenticated hadiths, is considered by most Muslims the most authentic book after the Quran.
The rigor is remarkable. Systematizing law, authenticating traditions. Al-Bukhari's method sounds incredibly thorough. It highlights their commitment to preserving the faith's purity. But how did these formal interpretations intercept with philosophy, especially when philosophy seemed to challenge core beliefs?
And that brings us to the theological debates. Core traditional beliefs were clear. Absolute unity of God, finality of Muhammad's message, Quran as God's word, Hadith as guidance. Simple enough.
But then Greek philosophy entered the scene.
With those translations in the 8th century, a new group, the Mu'tazila, those who separated, emerged. They believed rationalism could uncover divine truths, sometimes even overriding revelation. Their conclusions were radical for the time.
Like what?
They argued the Quran was created, not eternal, that God was somehow limited by his own justice, that humans had absolute free will, very different from mainstream views.
And this provoked a reaction.
A strong traditionalist reaction, led initially by Ahmad ibn Hanbal in the early 800s. He argued for strict, literal interpretation of Quran and Hadith in theology, rejecting philosophy when it contradicted revelation, accept God's attributes literally without asking how.
Did that stop the Mu'tazila?
It slowed them, but didn't defeat their arguments intellectually. That changed with al-Ash'ari in the 10th century. He advocated defending traditional beliefs using reason, a method called kalam. This allowed traditionalists to fight fire with fire, using logic to counter Mu'tazili arguments.
And al-Ghazali was key here, too.
Abu Hamid al-Ghazali, late 11th and early 12th century, hugely influential. He argued faith shouldn't be entirely based on philosophy, but acknowledged logic's place in defending traditional ideas. He cautioned against philosophy without a firm grounding in belief first.
The dynamism is incredible, these deep debates, reason versus tradition, a community grappling with complex ideas, seeking truth. But beyond these internal debates, how did that major split within Islam itself, Shi'ism, develop and challenge the Sunni order?
Right, the profound split, Shi'ism. For the Shia, the root issue was Abu Bakr's caliphate. They believed Ali, the Prophet's cousin and son-in-law, should have been the first caliph, by divine right.
So they saw Abu Bakr, Umar, and Uthman as
usurpers, essentially. They rejected the whole concept of the caliphate, advocating instead for an imamate. Only direct descendants of Muhammad through his daughter Fatima and Ali had the divine right to rule. Ali was the first imam, then his sons Hassan and Hussein.
And this affected their view of hadith.
Greatly. They distrusted hadith narrated by those who supported the first three caliphs. Instead, they elevated the sayings of their own imams to a level near or sometimes equal to the prophets. They believed the imams were infallible interpreters with special divine knowledge, an idea influenced by Mu'tazili philosophy, which helped them theologically legitimize the imamah.
And there were different branches of Shi'ism?
Several main branches. The Twelvers, Ithna Ashariya, believe in 12 imams. The last, Muhammad al-Mahdi, went into greater occultation in 941 CE, awaiting his return. Their guidance comes from the Quran, accepted hadith, and imam beliefs. The Seveners, Sabiya or Ismailis, believe in 7 imams. The last, Ismailin, went into hiding.
Yeah.
They were often more politically active, founding significant states. And the Zaydis, Fivers, believe in 5 imams, generally more moderate and closer to Sunni Islam.
How did the Sunni majority respond?
Shi'i ideas never gained majority support. Mainstream Muslims, Ahl-Sunnah wal Jama'ah, Sunni, generally saw Shi'i ideology as a threat to Islam's purity and unity. Theologians like al-Ghazali wrote powerful refutations of Shia arguments.
And Shi'ism declined in influence for a while.
Yes, after the 1100s, due to these intellectual recitations and also political and military defeats of Shia states, it only really reemerged as a major political force with the Safavid Empire in Persia in the early 1500s.
This dive into Shi'ism really shows how different takes on foundational events can create deep, lasting divisions, politically and theologically, a crucial counterpoint to any idea of a monolithic Islam. But as these internal divisions played out, what external forces started to wreak havoc on the Muslim heartland, threatening its very existence? Chapter 6. Decline and External Threats, a World Under Siege.
Exactly. From the 10th to 13th centuries, despite those intellectual golden ages, the Muslim world faced escalating threats, both internal and external. A really turbulent few hundred years, quite a contrast to earlier expansion and stability.
Starting with Ismailism as a revolutionary force.
Yes, the Ismailis, Seveners, posed a significant challenge. They offered this alternative leadership model, the imamate, claiming imams had a special connection to God, directly challenging the Sunni caliphate. Their missionaries, often working underground, found support among lower classes, non-Arabs, Bedouins groups resentful of Abbasid authority.
And some were quite radical, the Qarmatians.
Extremely radical. Based in Bahrain, they terrorized the Abbasids, sacked Basra, Kufa, And then that shocking attack on Mecca in 928 CE, massacred the population, stole the Black Stone from the Kaaba, held it for over 20 years. A truly sacrilegious act that horrified the Muslim world.
But a more successful Ismaili group emerged, the Fatimids.
Yes, the Fatimids invaded Egypt in 969 CE, establishing Cairo as their magnificent capital. They quickly became the most powerful state in the region, but their expansion was checked by the Byzantines and, ironically, even by the rival Cormatians who thought the Fatimids weren't extreme enough.
And Fatimid rule was inconsistent.
Very. Often characterized by radical policy shifts based on the reigning caliph's whims. Periods of intense persecution for Sunnis, Christians, Jews like under Al-Hakim, the Mad Caliph, who ordered the destruction of churches, including the Church of the Holy Sepulchre in Jerusalem around 2009.
So they lacked broad support.
Largely confined to the political elite. Without a strong legal or intellectual base beyond the caliph's personal authority, Ismailism didn't take deep root among the masses. The Fatimids eventually declined and were eliminated by Salah al-Din during the Crusades. Their rise really shows the internal fragmentation. Their inconsistent rule highlights the dangers of power without clear legal guidelines. So, as the Muslim world faced these internal schisms, what massive external shock came from Christian Europe?
That, of course, brings us to the Crusades.
The trigger, ironically, began far away with the rise of the Seljuk Turks. Nomads from Central Asia, they migrated west, adopted Sunni Islam, and established a stable empire by 1037 CE, stretching from Syria to Central Asia. Staunch Sunnis, they became protectors of the Abbasid caliphs and a crucial counterweight to the Shia Fatimids.
And the Battle of Manzikert in 1071 was key.
Absolutely pivotal, a decisive Seljuk victory over the Byzantine Empire in Anatolia. It shattered Byzantine power there and opened the door for Turkic expansion right towards Constantinople,
Which led the Byzantine emperor to ask for help.
Emperor Alexios appealed to Pope Urban II in 1095. But Urban saw a bigger opportunity, not just helping Alexios, but rallying a pan-European Christian army to conquer Jerusalem itself, which had been peacefully under Muslim rule since Umar's time.
The First Crusade, 1096-1099.
Armies marched across Europe, infamously massacring European Jews along the way. Alexios, wary, denied them entrance to Constantinople. They eventually reached Antioch, then Jerusalem.
And the conquest of Jerusalem in 1099.
A disaster, a profound trauma for the Muslim world. Over 70,000 civilians massacred in the Al-Aqsa Mosque compound. Reports of blood up to the conqueror's shins. Mosques, synagogues destroyed. Even local Christians suffered under the imposition of Latin Christianity.
And the Muslim response was fragmented.
Tragically, yes. Anger raged in Cairo and Baghdad, but no unified front emerged. The Fatimids were ineffective. The Abbasids powerless. Turkic emirs in Syria, Iraq, Persia were too busy fighting each other. This allowed the Crusaders to consolidate 4 kingdoms along the coast, with little real opposition. The brutality in Jerusalem is a stark reminder of the consequences of that disunity. The fact that powerful Muslim states were so preoccupied with internal squabbles, a painful turning point. So how did they eventually find the strength, the unity, to push back?
That brings us to the Counter-Crusade and a legendary figure, Salah al-Din.
Initial resistance came from Imad al-Din Zengi, a Turkish emir in Mosul who started uniting Mosul and Aleppo. His son, Nur al-Din Zengi, continued the fight with even more strategic vision.
And they intervened in Egypt when the Crusaders invaded?
Yes, when Crusaders invaded Fatimid Egypt in 1163 and 1168, Nur al-Din sent armies, including his general Shirkuh and his brilliant nephew Salah al-Din, to protect Egypt. Importantly, he did this despite the Fatimids being Shia, prioritizing broader Muslim unity against a common enemy.
Salah al-Din then rose to power in Egypt.
After Shirkuh's death, yes, Salah al-Din in the west, took control. He eventually abolished the Fatimid Caliphate in 1171, restoring Sunni Islam. Then, when Nur al-Din died in 1174, Salah al-Din marched into Syria, uniting Egypt and Syria under his rule for the first time since the Fatimids emerged. This created a powerful, unified Muslim state surrounding the fragmented Crusader kingdom.
Leading to the Battle of Hattin in 1187.
The decisive moment. Salah al-Din crushed the Crusader army, breaking their military power. Later that year, he recaptured Jerusalem.
But his conquest was different from the Crusaders.
Completely different. He offered remarkably lenient terms to the Christian inhabitants, a stark, deliberate contrast to the 1099 massacre. This act of mercy and strategic brilliance cemented his legend. Though the Crusades continued for over a century, they never again posed the same level of existential threat.
Salah al-Din's story is powerful. Strong leadership, renewed unity turning the tide. His leniency set a new standard. But just as the Crusader threat faded, What new, even more devastating storm was brewing? One that would shake the Muslim world to its core.
Ah, yes, the darkest chapter for many. The Mongol invasion, early 1200s, the terrifying rise of Genghis Khan, united the Mongol tribes, forged this vast land empire from Korea to Persia's borders in just a few years.
Their tactics were brutal.
Unbelievably brutal. Nomadic horsemen, incredible speed, deliberate campaign of terror, capitulate and join, resist and die, garrison killed, city looted, or mass resistance, everyone massacred. Fear was a primary weapon. The powerful Muslim Khwarezmian Empire in Persia, already weakened by internal conflict and reliance on slave soldiers, was essentially destroyed by 1222, just 3 years after Genghis arrived.
The destruction was immense. Cultural loss.
Incalculable. Major cities in Iran, Afghanistan annihilated. Libraries, Nishapur, Balkh destroyed. Books dumped into rivers, the Tigris running black with ink, red with blood. Muslim historians claimed millions massacred. Centuries of Islamic civilization just erased.
There's a brief reprieve after Genghis Khan died.
His son Ogadai focused on Europe. But then, Christian Europe, still crusading, sought an alliance with the Mongols, who had Nestorian Christian links, for a joint invasion of Muslim lands. This led to Hulagu's campaign in 1255.
Hulagu was Genghis's grandson.
Yes. Led perhaps the largest Mongol army ever, over 100,000, joined by Christian Armenians and Crusaders. The Muslim world was tragically disunited. Weakened Khwarezmians, struggling Abbasids, Mamluks overthrowing Ayyubids in Egypt, ill-prepared, which led to the fall of Baghdad in 1258. The infamous fall. Hulagu besieged the Abbasid capital, the heart of the Islamic world since 750. Caliph al-Mustasim refused to surrender. After a week, the city fell.
The destruction was unspeakable.
Estimates range from 200,000 to over 1 million Muslims massacred. Only Christians largely spared. The House of Wisdom razed, books dumped into the Tigris. Thousands of invaluable works lost forever. The Caliph himself, wrapped in a carpet, trampled to death.
A symbolic end.
Absolutely. The end of Baghdad is that political, scientific, religious center. Only a figurehead Abbasid Caliphate remained under Mamluk protection in Cairo until 1517.
But the Mongols were stopped.
Hulagu continued into Syria, taking Aleppo, Damascus. But then the Mamluks, the young Mamluk Sultanate, led by Sultan Baybars, halted the Mongol advance at the Battle of Ain Jalut in Palestine in 1260, used their own cavalry tactics against them. The first major Mongol defeat in Muslim lands saved Egypt, perhaps Islam itself.
And there was a Mongol civil war.
Yes, a Mongol Khan in Russia, Berk, converted to Islam and allied with the Mamluks against Hulagu. This fractured the Mongol Empire, which fragmented by the late 1200s, halting expansion.
So Islamic civilization survived, but devastated.
Utterly ravaged, politically and culturally. It led to deep theological questions. Why did God allow this destruction by pagans? Ibn Taymiyyah, late 13th, early 14th century, led a response. The problem wasn't Islam, but Muslims straying from correct practice. He sought to purge innovations, denounce leaders not upholding Islamic law, hugely influential on later revivalist movements.
The fall of Baghdad, the Mongol destruction, almost apocalyptic. Yet, in Jalut, the Mongol divisions show incredible resilience. It profoundly shaped how Muslims viewed faith and destiny. So while the heartland suffered what was happening out on the edges, particularly in Iberia, Al-Andalus, where Islam had once shone so brightly, Chapter 7, Al-Andalus, the lost western frontier.
Right, let's journey west. Al-Andalus, modern Spain and Portugal. A complex, vibrant society where Islam and Christian Europe directly interacted. Periods of amazing cultural fusion and eventual tragic decline.
We touched on the rapid conquest. 711, 7 went fine. Why so fast?
Several factors. The Visigothic monarchy under Roderick was unpopular, facing internal conflicts, disloyalty. Few cities resisted Muslim armies, accepting favorable surrender terms, local autonomy. Resistance often came from separatists, not Visigothic loyalists. Muslims did raid into France, but mainly focused on Iberia.
What followed was that golden age of coexistence.
Yes, Andalusian society blossomed. Christian and Jewish communities were protected under Islamic law, leading to remarkable mutual influence. Christians, Mozarabs, adopted Arabic language, art, customs. You still see it in Spanish loanwords today.
And a Jewish golden age.
Absolutely. Jews, often brutally persecuted elsewhere in Europe, flourished in Muslim Spain. Religious freedom, integration into society. Jewish philosophy, like Maimonides, reached its peak here.
Cordoba in the 10th century was magnificent.
World class. Under Abd al-Rahman III, a patron of arts and sciences rivaling Baghdad. Over 600 libraries, the largest with 400,000 books, producing valuable goods, leather, silk, paper traded throughout Europe.
A bridge to Europe for knowledge.
A vital conduit, transmitting Muslim knowledge, math, astronomy, medicine, inspiring scholars like Pope Sylvester II, laying groundwork for the Renaissance. Architecturally stunning, too. The Grand Mosque of Cordoba, that forest of columns, red and white arches, Madinat al-Zahra, the palace city, the Versailles of its time. Cordoba was truly the ornament of the world.
Cordoba shines as an example of synthesis. Diverse communities, explosion of knowledge, art, a powerful counter to the clash of civilizations idea. But this golden age didn't last. How did it unravel?
Decline set in, leading to the Taifa period in the early 11th century. Complacency, internal conflict, enthusiasm for warfare faded as people got comfortable, hard to rally armies. Infighting among the Umayyad family and supporters became common. Elites focused on rivals, even listed Christian and Berber help, leading to civil war in Cordoba itself.
And the Christian kingdoms to the north exploited this.
Ruthlessly, Castile, Leon, Navarre, previously kept at bay, saw their chance. Taifa kings actually hired Christian armies against fellow Muslims, gaining short-term wealth, territory, but at huge long-term cost. Toledo paid Navarre to attack Zaragoza, which paid Castile to raid Toledo. A tragic farce.
The fall of Toledo in 1085 was a major blow.
Huge. Symbolic and strategic. Central Iberia lost. Other Taifas suddenly vulnerable. This prompted them to finally seek outside help.
The Taifa period is painful. Internal divisions exploited, Muslim rulers hiring Christians against Muslims, a profound loss of collective identity. The irony of these wealthy, cultured states causing their own demise. So who answered the call for help? And how did they try to restore Muslim power?
Help came from North Africa. The Murabitun, a nomadic Berber movement from the Sahara, simple lifestyle, strict Islam, grew exponentially, reaching Ghana. Their pure Islam message was attractive.
The Taifa kings called on them.
Yes. Facing the Reconquista Alfonso VI of Castile, besieging Seville, they pleaded for help. Yusuf ibn Tashfin led 12,000 Murabitun across the strait in 1086, decisively defeated Alfonso at the Battle of Zalaca, temporary security for Muslim Spain.
But Ibn Tashfin came back later.
He did. After seeing the Taifa kings' rivalries and treachery, and armed with a fatwa from Imam al-Ghazali declaring them corrupt, he returned around 1090, conquered Al-Andalus, overthrew the Taifa kings, exiled them to North Africa. Relatively little bloodshed because many Andalusians supported a return to past glory and unity.
So the Andalusians accepted Murabitun rule, despite cultural differences.
Largely, yes, preferable to Christian encroachment. They appreciated the focus on pure Islam and removal of unfair taxes.
The Murabitun intervention is classic, a return to fundamentals movement, revitalizing things, rallying around strong leaders, Muslim unity, and crisis. Fascinating how this external force was welcomed by the people whose rulers it deposed, but could they sustain it, or fall into the same patterns?
Unfortunately, history often repeats. The Murabitun declined. Yusuf ibn Tashfin's son, Ali, lacked his father's drive. Military might waned, Christians resumed major victories. Their purpose in Al-Andalus was questioned. Rebellions arose.
Leading to a second Taifa period around 1144.
Exactly. Neglected by the Murabitun, preoccupied with the Muwahhidun movement rising in Africa, suffering popular discontent, Al-Andalus fragmented again. Christian kingdoms again exploited the disunity, expanding territories.
Then the Muwahhidun entered.
Yes, successors to the Murabitun entered Al-Andalus around 1145 under Abd al-Mumin, annexed most of the south by 1163. But tragically, they followed the same pattern. Rise from the desert, halt Reconquista, then weaken over time due to family conflicts, loss of initial drive, and this time, critically, no new Berber movement emerged to take their place.
That cyclical nature is striking. Rising with zeal, uniting Al-Andalus, then succumbing to internal weaknesses. Initial fervor is hard to sustain across generations. So as Muslim power shrank, what was the fate of the last bastion, Granada?
The final chapter, the Emirate of Granada. After the Battle of Las Havas de Tolosa in 1212, a pan-European crusade that decimated the Muwahhidun army, breaking their power, only Granada held out.
Led by the Nasrid dynasty.
Yes, tracing descent from Banu Khazraj, who welcomed the Prophet in Medina. They managed to hold on for 2 more centuries, a refuge for Muslim exiles from Christian Iberia. But where the Hijra to Medina signaled a beginning, this influx signaled the end for Muslim power in Iberia.
How did Granada survive so long?
Partly by becoming a tributary to Castile, providing military aid, gold, often from Mali, tragically strengthening Christian Spain at Muslim expense. Internally, despite the Alhambra's beauty, it decayed due to disagreements, court intrigue, family conflict. Emir Abul Hassan overthrown by his son Muhammad XII, Boabdil in 1482.
And no external help came.
No. Christian armies now used advanced artillery cannons, like the Ottomans used for Constantinople, taking fortresses quickly. Civil unrest preoccupied North Africa. Mamluks offered only symbolic support. Muhammad XII's incompetent leadership led to more civil war against his uncle, even alliances with Castilians against fellow Muslims. By 1490, Granada City was all that remained.
The fall came in 1492.
January 1st, 1492. Isabella and Ferdinand, uniting Castile and Aragon, besieged the city. No hope left. Muhammad XII surrendered, handing over the keys to the Alhambra. The flags declaring, "And there is no vigor except God," were lowered.
A profoundly symbolic end.
For Christians, fulfillment of centuries of struggle. For Muslims, the end of a long, enlightened, powerful chapter. Muhammad XII, exiled, famously reproached by his mother. "Do not cry like a woman for what you could not defend as a man."
The fall of Granada. 800 years of Islam in Western Europe ending. Internal fractures, external pressure, technology shifts, leading to the downfall. But what happened to the hundreds of thousands of Muslims left behind? How were they treated?
That brings us to the painful final act in Spain, the Moriscos. 500,000 to 600,000 Muslims remained, mostly in former Granada. Initially, Spanish rulers were somewhat tolerant, needing Muslims for local economies.
But conversion attempts began.
First with incentives, gifts, gold, led to insincere conversions. Then Archbishop Cisneros took a hardline approach in 1499. Harassment, persecution, imprisonment. His chilling quote, "If the infidels couldn't be attracted to the road to salvation, they had to be dragged to it."
This led to rebellions.
Desperate rebellions by Granada's Muslims, quickly defeated, but the memory of Al-Andalus revived. But the final blow came in the early 17th century. All Morisco's Muslims who nominally converted but secretly kept their faith were expelled.
A complete expulsion.
Systematic. Villages depopulated, property confiscated, children under 4 often taken to be raised Christian. The complete erasure of public Islamic practice from Iberia, though the call to prayer briefly rang out again during those last rebellions.
A somber end to a vibrant civilization. Religious intolerance, forced assimilation, political defeat leading to cultural obliteration. But as Islam faded from Western Europe, where else was it flourishing? Creating new centers far from the heartland. Chapter 8. The Edge Islam Beyond the Heartlands.
Exactly. We often focus on the Middle East, but Chapter 8 shows rich Islamic history unfolded at the edges: Sub-Saharan Africa, China, Southeast Asia, showcasing Islam's adaptability, its relationship with diverse cultures.
Starting with West Africa, empires of gold and scholarship.
Islam initially stayed near North Africa's coast, but it diffused south across the Sahara via Tuareg merchants, dominating trade routes, bringing wealth, gold, salt, and Islam to West African savanna kingdoms around the Niger River.
How did it spread there? Was it conquest?
Slowly, gradually, often mixing with pre-Islamic beliefs for generations. Muslim immigrant communities settled in cities. Unlike North Africa, it wasn't imposed by force. It adapted. Demir Baden briefly conquered some land, but it had little lasting impact on the spread itself.
The Mali Empire was key, 13th, 15th centuries.
Founded by Sundiata Keita, the Lion King, became one of the wealthiest, most powerful states globally, though largely unknown to the wider Muslim world then. Best exemplified by Mansa Musa.
His famous Hajj in 1324.
An epic spectacle. 60,000 people, 12,000 carrying gold bars, camels loaded with gold dust given away freely, caused massive inflation in Egypt, showcased Mali's immense wealth.
And he brought back scholars, creating Timbuktu as a center of learning.
Exactly. Scholars, teachers, artists, Arabs, Persians, Andalusians came back with him, creating this African society influenced by the wider Muslim world. Timbuktu became a leading center of Islamic knowledge libraries, mosques, universities, even surpassing some older centers after Baghdad's destruction.
Mansa Musa's Hajj is incredible, shows the wealth, ambition of West African Muslim empires, a reminder that Islam centers were fluid. And it adapted, integrated rather than imposed. How about East Africa? Swahili identity, Indian Ocean trade.
Trade links existed between East Africa and Arabia even before Islam. Some prophets' companions sought refuge in Aksum, Ethiopia. Bilal, the famous caller to prayer, was Ethiopian.
Spread via commerce again.
Primarily. Arab merchants, especially Yemenis, settled along the coast. Earliest Islamic artifacts from late 700s. By the 13th century, Islam rooted as far south as Tanzania. Wealthy Muslim merchants intermarried with local African women, creating this new hybrid culture with Islam at its heart.
The Swahili culture.
Yes. Swahili, a Bantu language, became the lingua franca, adopting many Arabic loanwords but remaining African. Islam was seen as native, not imposed. Thriving Muslim trading city-states emerged: Mogadishu, Kilwa, Mombasa. Ibn Battuta described them as commercial and religious centers, praising sultan's piety, patronage of scholars.
The Swahili blend of African and Islamic influences shows Islam's adaptability, trade fostering cultural synthesis. It enriched local identity, didn't erase it. But
Right.
how did these connections, particularly West Africa, lead to Islam crossing the Atlantic under tragic circumstances?
Right, a difficult but crucial part. African slavery in the Americas a lost heritage.
Yeah.
After 1492, European colonies needed labor. Native Americans decimated by disease. Europeans turned to sub-Saharan Africa.
The transatlantic slave trade.
European traders bought slaves, often captured by African kings, devastating West Africa politically, demographically. Millions forcibly taken across the Atlantic under horrific conditions.
And many were Muslims.
Estimates suggest 3 to 6 million of the 15-20 million Africans brought were Muslims, many educated from West Africa's Islamic centers. But practicing their faith was incredibly hard. Humiliations, subjugation, daily prayers, Hajj, learning severely restricted, knowledge declined over generations.
Not many were literate.
Uniquely, yes, sometimes more literate than their enslavers. Led to roles like accounting, but also enabled organized revolts, like the Bahia Rebellion in Brazil, 1835, planned by Muslim scholars using Arabic notes. That revolt led to some being sent back to Africa.
But ultimately, these communities disintegrated.
Yes, due to isolation repression. By the 19th century, a revival occurred in the 20th century. Figures like Malcolm X, W.D. Muhammad, leading African Americans back to mainstream Islam, recovering that lost heritage.
A powerful, overlooked chapter, suffering, resilience, shows how vital institutions connections are for preserving culture. So while Islam faced tragedy in the West, how did it establish itself in the Far East? China.
Further east, China. Islam reached China via diplomacy early, 650 CE, Uthman sending an ambassador. Permanent presence from the 700s. Muslim soldiers invited into the Chinese military, settled, intermarried, found a stable niche in government, military roles, a tradition continuing today.
Were they separate from mainstream Chinese society?
Often, yes. Big cultural differences with Buddhism, Confucianism, formed enclaves, maintained connections to the wider Muslim world, but the Mongol Empire changed things.
How so?
The vast Mongol Empire connected Muslim lands and China, led to mass migrations of Muslims into China, deeper assimilation. They took more public roles, especially as administrators. During Mongol and Ming dynasties, Chinese Muslims became fully assimilated. Chinese customs, names, but retaining religious identity, became known as Hui.
And Zheng, he was a famous Hui Muslim.
The most famous, Admiral Zheng He, 1371 to 1433, commanded massive treasure ships for Ming China. Voyages throughout Asia, Middle East, Africa, established diplomatic ties, influenced Islam spread in Southeast Asia, revered as Cheng Ho, embodied that fully Chinese yet fully Muslim identity.
Zheng, he embodies that synthesis. Islam adapting, flourishing in different contexts, even as a minority, challenges the idea of a single Islamic culture. So how did Islam become so embedded in Southeast Asia, maritime empires?
Finally, Southeast Asia, Muslim kingdoms emerged in India first, like the Delhi Sultanate. An interesting point, unlike many dynasties, Delhi sultans could be recalled, removed, staving off complacency. They generally recognized a Abbasid authority, maintaining ties despite distance.
And connected through Indian Ocean trade?
Yes, that network ties Southeast Asian Muslim kingdoms to the rest of the Muslim world. Pasai on Sumatra, the first Muslim state, 1200s, visited by Marco Polo, praised by Ibn Battuta. From Pasai, Islam spread to Malacca around 1400 CE.
Malacca was strategically vital.
Hugely. On the strait between India and China, immense trading wealth gave it massive influence. Malacca's Malay language and customs spread throughout the region. Malaysia, Indonesia, Philippines. Malay identity became linked with Muslim identity. Masuk Malayu entered the realm of the Malays, meant converting to Islam. This interwoven identity survived numerous invasions.
Southeast Asia shows Islam's global reach, adaptability through trade. Malay identity becoming synonymous with Muslim highlights that deep integration. These diverse regions became vital parts of the Muslim world. So as these new centers emerged, what powerful empires were rising from the ashes of the Mongol devastation back in the heartlands, reshaping the map? Chapter 9.
The Gunpowder Empires, a new era of Muslim power.
Exactly. The 15th and 16th century saw this remarkable rebirth of Muslim power, the Gunpowder Empires. Chapter 9 explores how these colossal states reshaped the world, starting with the Ottomans.
Their origins were small, a frontier state. Osman founded a small warrior state, a beylik, late 13th century, on the edge of the crumbling Byzantine Empire in Anatolia. Refugees from Mongol slaughter provided manpower. Early Ottomans saw war against Byzantium as religious duty, jihad, rallying thousands of Ghazis, warriors of the faith.
Early conquests, Bursa, then into Europe.
Osman took Bursa, first capital, by 1326. His son Orhan continued, adapting to sedentary life, siege tactics. By the 1350s, they crossed into Europe, establishing authority in Thrace, moving families in for stability. Bayezid I, Thunderbolt, late 14th century, rapid expansion in Europe and Asia, besieged Constantinople but lacked technology then.
There was a setback to more.
Yes, defeat by Timur, then civil war, the interregnum. But Mehmet reunited the empire by 1413. Ottoman institutions, guilds, janissaries recruited from Christian populations loyal to the state. Emphasis on Islam as unifying force allowed rapid recovery.
Leading to Mehmet II, the Conqueror.
Yes, mid-15th century. A polyglot, patron of art sciences, embodied the multi-ethnic empire. Completed conquest of Byzantine territory, leaving only Constantinople.
And the conquest of Constantinople in 1453.
The defining moment. Mehmet II used advanced cannon technology, foreshadowing Spain later. City fell after a 53-day siege. Fulfilled a prophetic prediction. Monumental victory launched Islam into Eastern Europe.
The Ottoman rise is incredible. Frontier state to empire. Adaptability, military innovation, gunpowder, religious mission. A clear shift in global power. So how did this empire flourish in its golden age, and what marked its eventual decline?
That brings us to the Ottoman Golden Age and initial decline, 16th, 17th centuries. Mehmet II continued expansion, Serbia, Bosnia, Moldova, Albania, even Italy briefly. Selim I, early 16th century, defeated the Safavids of Persia, annexed the entire Mamluk Sultanate, bringing the traditional heartland, Syria, Egypt, holy cities, under Ottoman control.
Inheriting the caliphate title.
Yes, from the figurehead Abbasids in Cairo, made Ottoman sultans protectors of Islam, holy sites, huge spiritual authority. Then came Suleiman the Magnificent, 1520-1566, the absolute peak.
Where did Suleiman expand?
North Africa, Algeria, Tunisia, Europe. Hungary besieged Vienna, challenged Portuguese in Indian Ocean, oversaw massive architectural projects, legal reform, kanune, flowering of art sciences.
But signs of decline started even then.
Late 16th century. Selim II, Suleiman's son, lost naval supremacy at Lepanto, 1571, against the united Christian fleet. Ottomans remained a major power, but rapid conquest was over. Europe was catching up. Stagnation set in.
What caused the stagnation?
Inflation from American silver influx, 1580 to 1640, changing military tech, cavalry versus gunpowder infantry, weakening central authority. Then the Treaty of Karlovitz, 1699, after a devastating 14-year war, forced to concede territory for the first time, Hungary, etc. Also forced to recognize, protect Christians, opening door for European interference.
Suleiman's reign, the peak. But seeds of decline already there. Karlovitz is pivotal, forcing acknowledgement of external limits, a symbolic shift. As the Ottomans hit limits, what other formidable Muslim empire flourished in India? The Mughals.
Yes, the legendary Mughals. Founded by Babur, late 15th, early 16th century, Turkic conqueror, claimed descent from Genghis Khan Timur, established himself in Kabul, then conquered Delhi Sultanate at Panipat, 1526.
And it was a fusion culture.
Less Mongol, more a fusion of Arabs, Turks, Persians, Indians. Hindus rewrote Persian architects inspired by Hindu buildings. India attracted Muslim scholars for missionary work. Akbar, late 16th century, was the peak of cultural religious mixing.
Akbar hosted interfaith debates, formulated his own religion.
Patron of arts, intellect, hosted debates, Hindus, Buddhists, Christians, Jews, formulated Din Ilahi, religion of God, focused on personal behavior, short-lived, unpopular with traditional Muslims, though.
Later emperors returned to more traditional Islam. Aurangzeb?
Yes, Aurangzeb, late 17th, early 18th century, last great Mughal, ruled at its apogee, 49-year reign, military expansion, personal piety. Disagreed with Taj Mahal's extravagance, sponsored scholars to compile Fatwa Alamgiri,
A legal code for Indian Muslims.
comprehensive guide. Became empire's official legal code. Re-established Islamic Sharia, increased popularity by abolishing unfair taxes. His relations with non-Muslims are debated today.
Reputation for intolerance. Destroying temples.
Modern reputation, yes. But temples were often political centers. Destruction, often political act against revolts led by temple officials, not purely religious. He also built new temples, had Hindu advisors. Highlights danger of imposing modern politics on historical figures.
The Mughals, especially Akbar, fascinating experiment in pluralism. Aurangzeb's complex legacy urges nuanced interpretation. So these empires, distinct but sharing core traits. What were the overarching similarities defining this new era?
Right, these three giants, Ottomans, Safavids, Mughals, represented a fundamental shift. They rose from the ashes of Mongol devastation, a rebirth. Shared a core culture despite distance, occasional religious differences, Ottoman, Mughal, Sunni, Safavid, Shia, Arab religion, Persian bureaucracy, Turkic ancestry. A Muslim in 1600s could travel Balkans to India, feel at home.
And shared technology, gunpowder.
Yes. Adopted gunpowder cannon widely. Ottomans first. Marked the final era of Muslim technical superiority before Europe gained the upper hand.
This commonality is powerful. Shared culture, initial gunpowder embrace, a newly confident, interconnected Muslim world. Fascinating how that technical superiority was transient. So as Europe industrialized, expanded, how did these empires decline, leading to European domination? Chapter 10. Decline the shifting global balance.
Exactly. Chapter 10 marks that dramatic shift.
Early.
Glory days over, particularly for Ottomans. Decline sets in. Global balance shifts profoundly.
History moves in cycles. Ottoman rise, then stagnation, decline.
Limits of military ability shown by Treaty of Karlowitz, 1699. Forced to concede territory first time. External interference begins. Treaty forced protection of Christians, setting precedent for European intervention. Economic challenges too.
American silver causing inflation. Trade risks shifting.
Huge inflation. Trade routes bypassed Ottoman lands. More territory lost in 1700s. Serbia to Austria, Crimea to Russia. Only French Revolution prevented complete partition then.
Right.
By late 18th century, Europe turned the tide.
This led to Ottoman reforms, adapting to Western dominance.
Desperate adaptation. Mahmud II, early 19th century. First reforming sultan. Reorganized government on European lines, ministries versus viziers. Ended janissaries, bloody European-style military, Nizam-e-Sidid, reformed education, French taught, changed clothing, trousers, fez, sidelined religious scholars opposing Western borrowing.
Then the Tanzimat era, mid-19th century.
More extensive reforms. Legal shift. Old Islamic Sharia replaced with French-based system, Enlightenment natural rights, fundamental infusion of secularism, unprecedented for a Muslim empire, aimed at appeasing Europe.
And Ottomanism, a common identity.
Attempt to combat rising nationalism. All citizens equal regardless of religion, ethnicity. In reality, increased tensions. Muslims saw Christians gaining economic advantages via capitulations, now losing legal social advantages too.
Ottoman decline is stark. Rapid shift in global power, forcing desperate adaptation. Adopting secular codes, a profound break. Painful choices. What happened to the Mughals in India during this European ascent?
That brings us to the British takeover of India. Post-Aurangzeb instability, 18th century, Mughal Empire unraveled into independent states. Pashtuns, Bengalis, Sikhs, Hindu Marathas. Widespread instability, conflict. India held 25% of world wealth then.
The British East India Company exploited this.
Masterfully. From 1740s, intervened in local wars, gained trading privileges, tax collection authority, installed favored governance. By late 18th century, company was India's leading political force.
And rule was exploitative.
Highly. Devastated local merchants with British monopolies. Favored Hindu middlemen over Muslims, seen as threat to Mughal resurgence. Led to Sepoy Rebellion, 1857.
Triggered by greased cartridges.
Yes, offensive to Muslims and Hindus. Revealed deep resentment of British plundering. Rebellion failed, but ended company rule. British government took over directly the British Raj, confiscated lands, Muslims blamed for revolt, social status plummeted, nominal Mughal empire officially abolished.
British takeover. Economic exploitation. Strategic blame on Muslims. Chilling example of imperial dismantling. Devastating impact. How did this pattern of European dominance spread across the whole Muslim world?
That brings us to European imperialism overall. 19th century, global domination. Britain, France, Holland, Russia exploited Europe's growing power, believed themselves superior. Colonization as white man's birdie, employed divide and conquer.
Knowing Islamic history of unity.
Deliberately fractured the Muslim world, drew arbitrary borders, ignoring local identities, making territories easier to subjugate, piece by piece taken. By 1914, most Muslims under foreign occupation raised profound questions about faith, future.
Arbitrary borders, divide and conquer. Lasting legacy of instability, resentment still seen today. External pressures fundamentally reshaped the political landscape. How did Muslim societies grapple with this decline, leading to that clash of old and new ideas? Chapter 11, old and new ideas reconciling past and present.
Yes, Chapter 11 delves into that existential crisis, 18th, 20th centuries. If Islam's historical success proved its truth, what did European triumph mean? Led to fierce intellectual, sometimes physical, battles between old and new ideas.
A theological problem of decline.
Exactly. Early Muslims saw success as proof of Islam's truth. European conquest created a crisis. If Islam is true, why this seemingly final defeat? The revivalist response emerged. return to traditional practice. Success would return if Muslims emulated early generations.
But there was another approach, emulating the conquerors.
The Western approach. Some intellectuals, influenced by European nationalism, secularism, argued Muslims should emulate the West to regain power. Belief focus on religion hindered modernization, social changes followed, exposure to Western culture, tourism, officials, missionaries, led to permeation of European architecture, music, fashion, even norms, alcohol, European languages, in cities like Cairo, Beirut.
But it was unequal.
Profoundly unequal interaction. Western culture associated with power, traditional Muslim culture with backwardness. Many adopted Western norms to emulate perceived power.
That tension, traditionalist return versus modernist embrace, a deep identity crisis, still shaping the Muslim world. How did specific Islamic revivalist movements try to navigate this, seeking internal solutions?
Several impactful movements arose. The Salafi movement in Arabia, Muhammad ibn Abd al-Wahhab, 18th century, allied with Muhammad ibn Saud. Wahhab's Puritan ideas legitimized Saud's kingdom, advocated return to pure Islam. Saudi control of Mecca Medina allowed global spread.
Shah Waliullah in India.
Also 18th century, feared Muslim disunity, Hindu resurgence post-Aurangzeb, advocated broad Islamic unity based on Sharia's social aspects to prevent collapse. Unlike Wahhab, didn't call for arms against fellow Muslims, opposed westernization, Hindu political power.
And Hassan al-Banna in Egypt, 20th century.
Founder of the Muslim Brotherhood, sought to reconcile Western modernism with traditional Islamic values, adopted Western organizational ideas, schools, hospitals, social welfare, but rejected secularism. Immensely popular, but faced persecution from strict secular nationalism.
These movements, diverse but sharing concern for decline, conviction that answers lay in renewed Islamic principles, albeit different approaches. Powerful internal intellectual response. How did the final dismantling of the Ottoman Empire, the last caliphate, lead to new nation-states, arbitrary borders, lasting conflicts?
The final shattering blows, end of Ottomans, birth of new nations, WWI, the Arab Revolt, British promised a united Arab kingdom, encouraged Sharif Hussein of Mecca to revolt against Ottomans, alienated by Turkish nationalism. Arabs swept Western Arabia.
But they were betrayed, Sykes-Picot.
Secret British-French agreement, 1916, divided promised Arab lands, France, North Syria, Lebanon, Britain, Mesopotamia, Palestine, betrayed Hussein's dream. Then Balfour Declaration, 1917. British support for national home for Jewish people in Palestine. Contradicted Arab agreements, British self-interest maybe, created Middle East quagmire.
Turkey emerged as a secular state.
Post-WWI, Mustafa Kemal Ataturk expelled occupiers, abolished Ottoman Sultanate in 1922 after 623 years, established secular, Western-minded Turkish nation-state, shed Islamic, monarchical past, dramatic break.
And new Arab states with arbitrary borders.
British-French divided Ottoman Syria, Mesopotamia into Syria, Iraq, Lebanon, Jordan, Palestine. Ignored local identities. Iraq's borders created Sunni Arab Kurd versus Shia Arab split ethnic religious conflict. Lebanon, no natural borders. Christian minority dream, also religious conflict.
Palestine and Israel.
British allowed largely unrestricted Zionist settlement. 60K in 1918 to 460K by 1939. Arabs saw British Jews as enemies. In 1948, Israel established. Arab nations failed to defeat Israel, which expelled over 700,000 Arabs. Nakba. Profound political failure. Arab soul-searching.
And partition of India.
Indian independence movement. Hindu-dominated Congress. Muslims feared Hindu dominance after centuries of Muslim rule. Pakistan movement. Jinnah Iqbal advocated partition. 1947, British partition. Pakistan emerged as Muslim state. Northwest East Bengal, founded on Islamic character, not ethnicity monarchy. Muslims left in India became smaller minority.
Carving up empires, creating nations with little regard for reality, profoundly reshaped the Muslim world. Lasting conflicts, ideological shifts away from political Islam, seeds of contemporary challenges sown then. So, looking at this whole history, how does the Muslim world today grapple with its past? What are the enduring tensions?
What a journey through lost Islamic history. From pre-Islamic Arabia's raw environment to Golden Age intellectual leaps, Mongol devastation, Al-Andalus's resilience and fall, global empires rising and declining right to the modern nation-state era.
Indeed, this deep dive shows a history far richer, more complex, more globally intertwined than often portrayed. We've seen geography shape destiny, faith fuel science, unity bring power, division lead to decline.
And perhaps the most compelling takeaway, that constant thread, is the ongoing tension between tradition and modernity. From early caliphs deciding succession to theological debates on reason versus revelation to today's clash of secularism, nationalism, political Islam, this civilization continually grapples with identity, governance, progress.
The Muslim world today remains at a crossroads, deeply split over Islam's role in public life, its future shape. Ongoing debates, Arab Spring, Turkey's trajectory show the questions raised by this history are far from settled.
So as you reflect on this vast, intricate history, consider this. In a world still grappling with identity, power, faith, what lessons from lost Islamic history might offer a path forward for societies seeking to reconcile their past with an ever-evolving present?
Is the answer found in a return to core principles? An embrace of new ideas? Or perhaps a delicate, constantly reevaluated balance between the four?
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. We hope this journey has given you a deeper, more nuanced understanding of a truly remarkable and vital chapter in human history.
Until next time, keep digging deeper.